The religious right. Oh, this is where it gets good. So we've gone from the hatred and the fear, violence, and all of that. Now we're just going to go down an absurdity rabbit hole here. The religious right is now targeting sexless marriages as selfishness. They want to ban those too.
So it does sound like it's comical, but actually it isn't.
Awful.
Because as you know, as we learn more about people, their identities, their sexualities, we are beginning to see the prevalence of asexuality that is present within the population. And even, to some degree, I realized more recently that I do exhibit a level of asexuality. And I understand it a little bit more now. Back when I was doing Behind Open Doors, I actually had a guest on who helped, open my eyes as well as the audience eyes to what asexuality was about. And it's not a matter of loss of intimacy. It's not a matter of loss of emotional connection to an individual or a deep binding, connection to an individual. It's not even an absence of sexual activity within a relationship. It is just a matter of the drive that one possesses. Religious nationalists, Christian nationalist group are trying to block the Respect for Marriage Act. Now, the Respect for Marriage Act was basically going to codify the same-sex, laws that we now have on the books that would allow for the freedom of same-sex marriages. But 83 Christian nationalist groups led by the Alliance Defending Freedom sent a letter to Mitch McConnell asking that this act be blocked. This is how they described the reasoning. H.R. 8404 would require federal recognition of any one state's definition of marriage without any parameters whatsoever. This would include plural marriages, time bound marriages, open marriages, marriages involving a minor or relative, and platonic marriages. Christian nationalists want to come in and they want to define a marriage only on the principle that that couple actually can have sex, will have sex, and could possibly reproduce children. That is their definition of a legal marriage.
Well, and they will. Isn't that I think that's a Catholic belief, right? That you must produce multiple children, like you must keep trying to make children. You cannot use contraception. Sort of the more kids the better.
No, it's not that you have to keep trying to make kids. It's more of a passive understanding of that, in that children are a blessing, and the more children you have, the more blessed your family has been by God. Children are a physical representation of the blessing of God upon your household. So to take any step to prohibit the birth of a child, whether that be using contraceptives, or it would be through abortion, or it would be through chastity and abstinence in a marriage. Any efforts to do that are an efforts to stymie the will of God for marriage. Therefore, Catholics say you should be having sex, you should be allowing the possibility for children, and if you have lots of children, you're just being blessed by God.
So, kids at home, did you catch the interesting irony about the way this was worded? And are you excited to find out how this resolves? If you'll notice, it said their response to this, their rejection of it, says that it would require federal recognition of any state's definition of marriage. I don't know if you remember who Republicans are, but their whole thing is that the states should have the right to decide any and all things, and that the federal government should not be able to tell them crap. That is their entire premise. So it's very interesting and ironic to hear that as a rejection of this, that that the states could choose whichever way they want, considering that's the entire premise of the Republican Party.
So let me kind of put this back into where they're coming from, because it's not just It's not saying that, the states are losing. What it's saying is that one state can approve this, but another state should have a right to deny it and deny its legal standing. So let's just use for an example of Ms. Emily, you and your partner decide to get married. In California, it would be legal.
Mhm.
But God forbid something horrible should happen and you'd have to move to Texas.
Mhm.
And Texas would say, your marriage is no longer binding legally. You lose all the rights.
Mm.
What they're wanting to do is they're wanting to keep states' rights in place so that, hey, if California wants to marry him off, great. California can marry him off and they can stay in California. Just don't come in this state, because if you come in this state, we're going to take those rights away from you.
So it would do the opposite of what I thought. Based on that wording, it would force other states to recognize, because of federal regulation, what another state has done.
Exactly.
Mm.
What this act would do, if it passes the Senate, would create a blanket legality across the United States that the federal government would have in place that basically says one state must recognize what is legal in another state when it comes to marriage.